The Xbox One has never really been all that well known for having a lot of JRPGs. It's just a genre that has typically been lacking on the Xbox brand. However, even if the Xbox One isn't necessarily known for JRPGs in specific, there are quite a few really good ones out there for you to play as of 2020. I do expect this list to grow over time with the Xbox Series X, as Xbox does seem to be more committed to Japan than they ever have been before. But for today, we are going to focus on the top 15 best JRPGs available on the Xbox One as of 2020. Now, with that said, there are always a lot of differing opinions on what makes a JRPG a JRPG. Some people believe it's anime or turn-based games, while others believe it's based off where the game was developed. To keep this video as simple as we possibly can, if it's an RPG that was developed in Japan, I'm going to consider it a JRPG. Also, do remember that this is only my opinion, and your list may be completely different than mine. And if that is the case, let me know in the comments below and tell me what some of your favorite games are as well. With that said though, let's get right into the list. At number 15, I have Ys Origin, and if you've been playing JRPGs for a while, you will probably recognize the long-running Ys franchise immediately. There is a reason that these games are just so beloved, and Ys Origin is no different. The gameplay is insanely fun with its action RPG hack-and-slash mechanics, some light platforming, and the boss encounters really are the bread and butter of Ys Origin. This is where I think the game is at its absolute best, and learning the patterns of each boss. You can't simply button mash to win, and it does require you to be more meticulous in how you attack. The art style is a little old school, and it looks like its best fit would be on a handheld device, but I like the art style a lot actually, and I think this can easily be played on the big screen. If there is one Japanese publisher that really supports the Xbox One, it would be Sega, and one of the better JRPGs that they have brought to Xbox is Shining Resonance. It's a game that's often overlooked, and honestly, it really shouldn't be. Overall, it's a fun game all the way through with a good combat system, and yes, it is another action JRPG. The thing that really stands out to me though in Shining Resonance is their focus on characters. There is a lot of downtime between missions where you can focus on building relationships with each character. In this sense, you can work on some romance, and while I don't think the story is mind-blowing or anything, I would simply classify Shining Resonance as just plain fun and something you may want to check out. Code Vein is an interesting title. It's basically the anime version of Dark Souls, though just because it does have similarities with Dark Souls, doesn't necessarily mean it can't stand its own ground. It is unique in several aspects, especially in terms of its story. I think that is what surprised me the most with Code Vein, because it does have a very good story about vampires, hence the name Code Vein. It can be a little melodramatic, but it's certainly worth playing through for that reason alone. The combat itself is quite fun as well. It does ask you to be meticulous with your attacks, but also you have several abilities that you can use both close range and long range that you can take advantage of. On top of all that, it also has a nice cooperative system, which is a nice bonus here. And yeah, this isn't just an anime version of Dark Souls. Code Vein is a really good game, no doubt about it. Next up we have Dragon's Dogma, which is one of the more underappreciated games made within the last decade, and how I wish that wasn't the case. This is a game deserving of a sequel to truly capitalize on what makes this game so special, but I digress. Dragon's Dogma has a lot going for it, from its world filled with plenty of things to explore, its in-depth RPG mechanics and pawns, and especially with its combat. Some of the chimera-like creatures that you encounter are just a rush to fight against, and even has that Shadow of Colossus aspect to it where you climb these huge beasts. It's not a perfect game by any means, but there is a lot to like here, and a game that's a lot of fun. Phantasy Star Online 2 coming exclusively to the Xbox One may have possibly been one of the biggest surprises of this entire generation. It has been available in Japan for 8 years, and fans have been asking for a Western release ever since that point. until Xbox and Sega teamed up to bring it to the West, and thankfully, it seems to have been handled with a lot of love and care. It's now fully available in English and even has voice acting in it. The dialogue isn't exactly synced up with the characters' mouths, but you will quickly be able to ignore that because this is a really fun game. Now, Phantasy Star Online 2 is actually an MMO, and a pretty massive one at that, so it can be a little intimidating at first, but if you can put the time into it, then Phantasy Star Online 2 is a great game to pick up and play. And it's also free to play, so there really is no reason not to jump into Phantasy Star Online 2. Back on the Xbox 360, Microsoft managed to work with the father of Final Fantasy, Hironobu Sakaguchi, on an exclusive Xbox game, Blue Dragon. And even though this game originally released on the Xbox 360, thanks to backwards compatibility, Blue Dragon still remains one of the best JRPGs on Xbox. This is in part thanks to the lovely art design worked on by Akira Toriyama, most well known for his work with Dragon Ball. It still looks beautiful on the Xbox One even all these years later, and has great turn-based combat with a pretty in-depth class-based system. The story is also enjoyable, and Blue Dragon plays very similar to old-school JRPGs, which, in my opinion, is a good thing, and even though it's not the most revolutionary game in the world, I do think that any old-school JRPG fan will enjoy Blue Dragon. The Monster Hunter franchise has always been popular in Japan, but for the first time ever, Monster Hunter World has captured a worldwide audience as it made a huge jump into console gaming and the best visuals for the franchise to date. It's a little different than other games on this list, and your main focus is slaying monsters and using the resources from those monsters to upgrade your gear. For this reason, Monster Hunter World can be incredibly addicting and become really grindy in order to get the best gear. The monsters, though, is what makes this game so good, as each monster behaves and animates the way you would think they would in real life. The behavior in specific is what really shocked me, and when I saw one monster eat another, I knew this game was a special game. The fact it also has great cooperative gameplay to it, and that you can play this game for hundreds of hours, makes this a must-play game. I always explain Valkyria Chronicles 4 as a unique game because of its strategic turn-based combat, and well, that's because it is very unique. There is nothing quite like Valkyria Chronicles. You can walk around or drive around large battlefields to put yourself in place to wipe out enemy units, and it can be exhilarating trying to outwit your opponent with good positioning using the right tactics. There really isn't anything quite like the combat of Valkyria Chronicles, and I also like the cel-shaded art style a lot. It really stands out with a timeless art style, and even the story is really interesting. Valkyria Chronicles is an absolute gem of a game, and I can't recommend this one enough. I would have loved to put Yakuza 0 higher on this list, but I do think it's very debatable if Yakuza 0 is a true JRPG or not. Yakuza really is a beat-em-up style game with light RPG elements to it, but after searching it up online, it seems like there is a lot of people who views Yakuza as a JRPG, so I decided to include it on this list. What I will say about Yakuza 0 though, is that it has one of the best stories in all games. I think if you just watch the trailer and the combat, you may think this game is just some goofy looking game, and there are certain aspects to it that is indeed very goofy. However, the story is super serious, and on several occasions may end up making you cry. The combat is fun as well though, even if a bit repetitive, but Yakuza 0 is a must-play in my honest opinion, especially if you like a good story. Tales of Vesperia has always held a special place in my heart as I simply adore the story in Vesperia. It's the characters in specific though, as they have so much chemistry with one another, and that is one aspect of games that I really don't think gets talked about near enough. Each character is interesting in their own right, and also the combat is a lot of fun. It's a little simplistic, sure, but still it's very fun. It basically puts you in a small circle and you can combine melee combat with your own special arts to quickly dispose of your enemies. It's also a game that boasts a timeless art style, and that's one of the reasons you will be able to play this game 10 years from now and it will still look great. If you're looking for a good story though, look no further than Tales of Vesperia. The entire Kingdom Hearts franchise has finally made its way to Xbox, and it immediately has become one of the best JRPG franchises on the Xbox One. I mean, sure, the story is a convoluted mess, and Kingdom Hearts fans probably understand what I mean by that. But with that said, the story is still very interesting. Sure, it doesn't always make sense, but it doesn't stop it from being enjoyable. I think with Kingdom Hearts 3 in specific though, and what I think fans are really going to like is the massive jump in terms of production values. It's a good looking game, and the combat took a big step as well. I did find it to be a tad bit too easy, but one way I would explain Kingdom Hearts is that it's a magical experience combining anime with the Disney world. I do think that every gamer should at least try Kingdom Hearts at least once in their life. Hironobu Sakaguchi has worked on some of the best JRPGs to ever be made, but one that is often overlooked is Lost Odyssey, an Xbox 360 exclusive published by Microsoft and developed by Mistwalker. In many ways, Lost Odyssey is very similar to the franchise Sakaguchi is most well known for, Final Fantasy. The thing is, at the time of Lost Odyssey's release, the industry was trying to leave this classic playstyle behind, but luckily Sakaguchi had other plans, as Lost Odyssey is one of the best JRPGs I've ever played. The turn-based combat is a lot of fun with its ring system that, if timed correctly, can add extra damage. And the characters are also very memorable, even if the cinematics are a bit dated. The one part of the story that really gets to me though is the dreams, which are these short stories. These stories span an entire century from the protagonist's point of view as he is an immortal, and through these dreams can show all the heartache an immortal goes through. These short stories are told with cleverly placed sound effects, and by the end of it, you may shed a tear or two. Dark Souls is arguably the most influential game for modern games as we know them today. The reason is pretty obvious too. The combat in Dark Souls is simply unmatched, and even though it has inspired so many games since its debut in 2011, I would still say that Dark Souls is the best at what it does. It's a game that doesn't just ask you to beat the game, but rather it wants to challenge you. It wants to push you to your limit and ask you to be better, and even the most common enemy can present a challenge for the player. And then there is the bosses, which I would consider the best among all games. Truly, they are brilliantly made, both in terms of their challenge and in their design. And even though Dark Souls can be challenging, I would say most of the time, it comes off as being fair and very rewarding. Yes, Dark Souls may have taken influence from Western RPGs, but in the process, it really did kind of create a genre of its own. Not a lot of games can really say they've done something quite like that. If there was just one word to describe NIER Automata, it would be masterpiece, and I don't think I'm exaggerating at all when I say that. From the moment that I picked up a controller to play NIER Automata, till the moment I reached the end, I absolutely loved this game. From the characters, to the brilliant music, and possibly some of the best I've heard in any video game, to the fast-paced fun combat, it's all done with perfection. The only thing about this game though, is that the end credits is kind of misleading. Rather than it actually being the end, I would say it's more of just part 1, because the second playthrough has you playing through a different scenario, and then the third playthrough is pretty much the sequel to the first two. So don't think of the credits as the end. You won't be completely finished until you beat NIER Automata at least 3 times, and when you do, this game may end up staying in your heart forever. Again, it truly is a masterpiece. And at number 1, I have none other than Final Fantasy, arguably the best JRPG franchise of all time, that has inspired so many RPGs afterwards. Now, the thing about Final Fantasy though, is that everybody has their own favorite Final Fantasy game, so there is no way I could possibly just choose one Final Fantasy game to play. They are all good in their own right. If you want to play a more modern Final Fantasy game, then Final Fantasy 15 is a great action RPG. And if you want more of the classic turn-based stuff, then 7, 8, 9, and even 10 are all fantastic. And then you also have Final Fantasy 12, which is different than all the others, but once again, it works. I would even say that World of Final Fantasy is good in its own right, and that's the thing. They all have great stories with memorable characters, and I think that is one of the reasons people love these games so much. They're timeless, fun to play, and not only are they some of the best JRPGs to ever be made, but they're some of the best games to ever be made. They truly are that good. Anyways though, that's it for this episode, but if I missed any of your favorite games, let me know in the comments below on some of your favorite games. That way we can all discover those games as well. With that said though, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Peace out.